Hi, my name's Gary Heisey. This video is intended as a supplement to a workshop I'm giving on Chinese landscape painting in the freestyle approach. This is the second of two videos. I'll be using three brushes today. The first is what's known as a mixed hair brush, a combination of hairs that are both soft, absorbent, and also stiff, so you get a nice mixture of absorbency and texture for the brush. The other is actually known as a rat's whisker brush. Just comes to a nice fine point. It's a very versatile brush. And the third one I'll be using mostly for color is my oldest brush that's held together with twine and glue. And that's really just for applying a little bit of color for the most part here. So to start off, you can't see as I'm dipping the brush into just using some water and then bouncing it to separate the bristles, and then going to be touching one edge of it into the ink itself. This way we'll get a variety of tonalities in a single stroke. Now, when I say freestyle approach, that's essentially using techniques and methods of classical Chinese painting, but using them in a much freer, intuitive manner. It's not so much a matter of, that term freestyle does not determine a technique. It simply really talks about a mindset and a general approach. Landscape painting in Chinese painting is typically done in layers, one layer after the other, to build up layers of ink and depth. And that can be done here as well, but it's sometimes not necessary. Switching over to the smaller brush to bring in a few trees. Just initially to suggest a few things. Suggest the branches, we'll be doing some foliage as well. We will be using color, but not until the basics of all the composition are set. The color will really be as a supplement, and the brushwork will supply 90% of the story of the image that we're putting down here. Just using the side of the brush to suggest the foliage for the trees. Sure to bring in some different tonalities and to leave some empty space in there too. At this point we can add the rest of the branches, just suggesting them. at this point, because the paper is so thin that most of the painting is fairly or almost completely dry. So I'm going to go ahead and start working some color into it. Using essentially yellow, indigo blue, the combination of which a little blue to the yellow would give you your best green. And also a couple browns. One is reddish, like an earth red, and a umber. The Chinese watercolors can be used rather thickly, like gouache, so that they're fairly opaque, or thinned down for a more translucent effect. I'm going to start off with the green. I'm using a small goat hair brush, very soft white bristles. Just to suggest a little bit for those trees. Not much is showing up here, but once it dries and is properly mounted, that color will pop a little better. Again, just a little suggestion of color. Got some pine trees here. Just a little water dabbed on that will help those colors to spread. If you're putting translucent watercolor down on rice paper, and if it's going onto a white piece of the paper, be sure to add a touch of dilute ink to it. Otherwise, the translucency will just simply look a bit anemic. Okay, I think about the only thing we need here is a little bit of blue indigo in the shadows. Again, just a touch. This is quite bare up here, and the composition is a pretty strong slope from the top right to the bottom left. So we're going to add a couple distant mountains to sort of slow the eye down. I simply have the my brush dipped into some diluted ink here, and I'm going to dip the rest of it into blue, into dilute blue. I want to finish up the painting by doing just a little bit of dotting, what's called dotting. If you look at the painting, the vast majority of it is painted in diluted ink strokes. Dark ink to lighter ink. Pure black is really reserved for just a few areas for accent. If you paint the entire thing in black ink, it will look very rigid, very heavy, very hard, not animated. But the sort of dotting we're going to do in this case can represent the moss on rocks, or I like to think of it on the landscapes as cedar trees, which grow on the high, dry southern side of hills. And visually it pulls together the composition very nicely, helps to describe the form, etc., and adds almost a counterpoint, almost a musical sort of rhythm to it. The paper itself is almost completely dry, but not quite. And I'm just laying them down with the tip. As they get further away, they're a little smaller. Don't let them sit only on contour lines. Bring them into the form itself. That will help to show the roundness of the hill. Here's the final finished painting, signed and sealed and mounted properly. And I hope this little demonstration was helpful to you. Thank you.